Have you ever heard of a crime where there was no victim, no weapon, and absolutely no blood, yet it turned out to be one of the most dangerous cases a detective ever faced? Well, settle in and get comfortable because today we are diving deep into the curious case of the crime that never took place. Our story revolves around Detective Elena Marsh. Now, if you follow true crime or mystery circles, you know that Elena wasn't your average investigator. She was legendary for her sharp instincts and a relentless pursuit of the truth that often put her at odds with her superiors. She had this uncanny ability to spot a lie from a mile away and a gut feeling that never seemed to steer her wrong. It was a miserable, rainy Tuesday evening when her phone rang. The rain was drumming against her office window, creating a rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound that was suddenly shattered by the piercing ring of her landline. The voice on the other end was distorted, barely a whisper, and dripping with an urgency that made the hair on the back of Eleanor's neck stand up. The caller claimed there had been a brutal murder at the old Whitmore Estate on the outskirts of town. The victim, according to the anonymous tip, was a wealthy and influential businessman named Victor Hale. Elena didn't hesitate. She grabbed her coat, checked her service weapon, and headed out into the storm. The Whitmore Estate was a place of local legends, a massive, aging mansion that sat atop a hill, overlooking the town like a silent guardian. It was a relic of a bygone era, filled with Gothic architecture and surrounded by overgrown gardens that looked like they belonged in a classic horror movie. As Eleanor drove through the winding, mud-slicked roads, her mind was already racing through the possibilities. Who would want Victor Hale dead? He was a man with many friends, but as she knew all too well, men of that stature often have even more enemies. When she finally pulled up to the grand entrance, the house was eerily dark, save for a single light flickering in the upstairs study. The silence of the estate was heavy, broken only by the distant roll of thunder. Elena didn't wait for backup. Something about the tip felt too urgent, too specific to ignore. She pushed through the heavy front doors, which were surprisingly unlocked, and stepped into the foyer. The air inside was thick with the scent of polished wood, expensive beeswax, and the musty aroma of old books. It was a beautiful home, but tonight it felt like a tomb. She made her way up the grand staircase, her footsteps echoing against the marble floors. Her hand rested on her holster, her heart hammering a steady rhythm against her ribs. She was expecting to find a gruesome scene, a struggle, perhaps a room tossed in a frantic search for valuables. But when she reached the study and pushed the heavy oak doors open, she stopped dead in her tracks. There was no body, there was no blood. Instead, there was Victor Hale himself, sitting comfortably in a large leather armchair. He was sipping a cup of steaming Earl Grey tea and calmly reading the evening newspaper as if nothing in the world was wrong. "Detective Marsh," he said, looking up with a calm, almost amused smile. "I must say I wasn't expecting company this late. To what do I owe the pleasure of this unexpected visit?" Elena was stunned. She stood there for a moment, her mind trying to reconcile the image of the murdered man from the tip with the living, breathing person sitting in front of her. She explained the anonymous call, the report of his death, and the urgency of the situation. Victor's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of thoughtful concern. He told her that he was very much alive, obviously, but he wasn't entirely surprised by the call. He had recently become embroiled in a bitter business feud with a rival firm, and he had been receiving vague, anonymous threats for weeks. Elena's instincts kicked in. If Victor was alive, then the tip wasn't a report of a crime. It was a lure, but a lure for what? She began to walk around the study, her eyes scanning every inch of the room. On the surface, everything looked perfect. It was the quintessential billionaire's office. But as she dug deeper, she started to notice things that didn't quite fit. She saw a pair of muddy footprints on the Persian rug, but they didn't lead toward the door or the desk. They just stopped in the middle of the room, as if someone had stood there and then simply vanished. She moved toward the window and noticed a shattered porcelain vase on the floor. It was a beautiful piece, likely worth thousands. But the way it had broken was strange. The shards were all neatly contained in a small circular area, almost as if it had been dropped vertically on purpose rather than being knocked over in a struggle. And then she saw the camera. It was a small, discreet lens tucked away in the corner of a bookshelf, hidden behind a row of leather-bound encyclopedias. The small red light that usually indicated it was recording was dead. When she checked the device, she found it had been tampered with, the memory card missing. It became clear to Elena that this wasn't just a prank or a false alarm. It was a carefully crafted illusion. Someone had gone to great lengths to create the appearance of a crime scene without actually committing a crime. They wanted her here. They wanted the police attention focused on this specific room at this specific time. But why? She sat back down with Victor and started asking more pointed questions about his business dealings. She learned that while they were sitting there talking, a major, top-secret deal was supposed to be finalized in another part of the estate, involving the sale of highly sensitive corporate data. The realization hit her like a lightning bolt. The murder tip was a distraction. It was a high-stakes game of misdirection. While she was busy investigating a non-existent murder in the study, the real crime was happening elsewhere on the property. Elena didn't waste another second. She began a systematic search of the mansion, following the faint sounds of movement coming from the east wing. She navigated through dark corridors and hidden passages that Victor himself didn't even know existed. In a secluded basement office, she finally found what she was looking for. There, huddled around a computer terminal, were two men in dark suits, frantically transferring files. One of them was Victor's own business rival, the very man who had been threatening him. They had used the fake murder report to pull all the estate security and any potential police response to the main house and the study, leaving the back entrance and the basement servers completely unguarded. It was a brilliant plan, nearly foolproof, but they hadn't accounted for the fact that Elena Marsh doesn't just look at what is in front of her. She looks at what's missing. The confrontation was swift. Elena called in the backup she had originally requested, and they caught the rival red-handed. The crime that never took place had almost fooled everyone, but Elena's refusal to accept things at face value saved Victor's company and brought a dangerous criminal to justice. As the sun began to rise over the Whitmore Estate, the rain finally stopped, leaving the world looking fresh and clean. Victor Hale thanked her, still a bit shaken by how close he had come to losing everything. Elena just nodded, heading back to her car. She knew that in her line of work, the most dangerous lies are the ones that look exactly like the truth. The case was closed, but she knew there would always be another mystery waiting around the corner. That's just the life of a detective. The truth, as always, has a way of finding its way to the surface, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it under layers of deception. Thank you so much for listening to this incredible story. If you enjoyed this journey into the mind of Detective Elena Marsh, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a case. We have plenty more mysteries coming your way very soon. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.